follow on Iran?
On Ukraine, Ukrainians had hoped to come to New York after severing the land bridge in Crimea. What message does President Biden hope to send about calls in the developing world to negotiate settlement? Sense of openness or no interest in that? And then on the Security Council, will President Biden and President Zelensky attend?
So with respect to calls for peace or negotiations, President Biden has been clear and will continue to be clear. The United States supports peace in Ukraine, but we support a just peace in Ukraine, and a just peace has to be based on the principles of territorial integrity and sovereignty. And incidentally, many of those countries that you're referring to in Africa and Southeast Asia and Latin America have actually reinforced the idea that they're not just generically calling for peace, they are calling for peace based on the very same principles that the United States supports: sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the proposition that you cannot simply rip off another country's territory by force. And you can't attack civilian infrastructure and try to destroy grain or energy capabilities that are sustaining human life and the economy of Ukraine. So we actually believe that we have, over the course of the past several months, built a strong engagement and dialogue with the Global South on what ultimately a just peace looks like. It does not seem that Russia is particularly serious about that at the moment, and so our job, from our perspective, is to provide Ukraine with the tools it needs to be in the best possible position on the battlefield so that it can be in the best possible position at the negotiating table. And the last thing that I would say, and we say this not just at podiums, but to our partners in the Global South, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Nobody is going to negotiate Ukraine's future without Ukraine being the judge of their own decisions, not us or anyone else imposing outcomes upon them. Yeah.
Thank you, Security Council.
So just to follow
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the Security
Security
Council question?
Will President Biden and President Zelensky attend?
We don't currently have plans for the president to be there, but I can't rule it out. But at the moment, I don't have anything to announce on that.
Thank you, Jay. Those two questions, Jake. You mentioned the Global South, and I think there's a lot of concern from the Global South that Ukraine is taking up a lot of oxygen at this and previous UNGA. And so how would the president balance the needs of the Global South countries, particularly on debt reduction and climate change and so on, and rally support for Ukraine at the same time? And also just to follow up on your point about making the General Assembly making the UN a more representative and democratic and effective body, where are we in terms of the president's support to reform the Security Council?
The president, in his UN General Assembly speech last year, actually laid out his view that we need to add additional both permanent and non-permanent members to the UN Security Council, and that we need a wider geographic representation on the Security Council. He will reinforce and reiterate that commitment this year as well. And then with respect to the question of how, on the one hand, we continue to support Ukraine full-throatedly, and on the other hand, we also make sure we're addressing the needs of the Global South developing countries, I'd say two things. First, these are connected, because the war, Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine, has caused ripple effects that impact food security, energy security, and other forms of harm to countries around the world. And so ending this war on just terms, on the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity, would serve the benefit not just of the Ukrainian people, but people everywhere. Secondly, we have shown we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We have strongly supported Ukraine at the same moment that we've put forward ambitious proposals on World Bank reform, that we have led at the table on debt relief, that we have mobilized tens of billions of dollars for infrastructure needs in developing countries, that we've announced new significant projects in every significant corner of the world that is meant to deliver for the needs of people in those countries, and we're going to continue to do that. And the president's speech will reflect that as well. Yeah.
Moscow said there was no agreement reached after the meetings with North Korea and Eastern Russia. What's your evaluation of what we've seen during the last days?
Look, we're not going to take their word for that or basically anything they say. We'll see what actually ends up happening. Our view has been before the visit and after the visit that talks about the provision of weapons by North Korea to Russia to kill Ukrainians have been advancing and continue to advance. I can't name a specific agreement for you today, but we take a look at that with a heavy grain of salt.